Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mondays with Michele video. This week, I'm introducing a new series, Working with Spreadsheets. This first video covers some of the basics, entering data, changing the font size, resizing columns, freezing the heading row, and saving your file. Let's get started. So when you open up Excel, if I open up my Excel product and I clicked on New, and I'm going to select Blank Workbook, you get a screen that looks like this, and it gives you your file number at the top. It just assigns a random file number the same way Word does when you open up a blank Word document. So you'll hear some terms. You'll hear the term workbook and worksheet. Workbook is the file. It's kind of like, think of it as if you were creating a Word document. You're writing up your family history. You're creating a book. That's your Word file. Inside the book, you've got different chapters. That could be like your heading ones. And each chapter is going to have multiple pages. So when you look at an Excel workbook, that's your file. What you are looking at on the screen right now is a section of that workbook, and they call it a worksheet. And each worksheet, if you look at what I've got on the page here, we've got 38 rows showing, but I could keep scrolling down forever. So a worksheet can be as long as you want. You could have 1,000 rows of information in a worksheet. If you decided to print it, Microsoft will chop those 1,000 rows into pages so that you can print it out on your printer. So it's the idea that one file, a workbook, can have multiple sections, which are called worksheets, and each worksheet can have a lot of data, which, if you print it out, will print out as multiple pages. So let's look at how you actually enter information in. If you notice, you've got all these little boxes. It basically looks like the whole page is one big table. Your columns are labeled with the letters of the alphabet. The rows have these little number designations so you can tell what row you're on. To enter information, you just click in a cell and type. So let's say we were going to set up a spreadsheet with some information. So last name, first name, and I just tab to move to the next cell. Event, tab over. Year, tab over. Age, and I'll put the mother's name and the father's name. Now, you'll notice some of these cells, the information looks kind of squished. So to make the cells bigger, the easiest way when you're first starting out, just click this little triangle in the top left corner. It selects everything on your worksheet. And all I'm going to do is go to one of these columns, the alphabetic letters, and you notice the minute I hover over the border between column B and C, my cursor goes into this double-headed left-right arrow kind of symbol. If I hold the left mouse button down and just drag, I'm making that whole column bigger. And because I've selected the whole worksheet, I'm making every column bigger. So right away, I have resized every column. So right now, I have columns A to G, all sized the same. If I wanted to size just one column, I would click the letter of the column, have my cursor go to those double-headed arrows, and just drag that one column. So now that we've got something that looks a little wider so we can actually type some information in, let's try typing in some information. So let's say I wanted to type in information on the Smith family. And we have John Smith, and maybe this is a census record that I'm recording, and it's the 1851 census, and John is listed as 15 years old. His mother is Ruth. His father is Fred, and I press enter. And the minute I press enter, Excel is smart enough to know I've finished that row. I probably want to go back to the first cell in the next row. So it sets me up to make it really easy to type more information. So I would go Smith and census, and all I did was type the letter C. It tries to autofill based on what I've already typed. If I like what it has put in as the autofill, I just have to press tab. So all I did was type the letter C. It said, "We think you mean census." I just tabbed off and it filled it in. 1851. Age will be 12. And we'll say, yeah, mother's the same. All I had to do was type R, tab, and Fred. So let's say there's another Smith family. This will be Rachel, census, 1851, 30, and this will be Jane and John. Whoops, Jane and John. So entering your data is just like when you are filling out a table in Word. You tab to go from one cell to another. The difference is because your entire screen is like one big table, you could tab endlessly. So to let Excel know that you are at the end of the row, you need to press return. And if for some reason it doesn't dump you back at the beginning of the next row, all you have to do is click on the cell that you want to type in. And if you find you've made a mistake, let's say it's not Rachel, it's someone else, I just click on the cell. I can press delete to get rid of what's there, and I just type the new name and press tab. So unless you press tab or press enter, the computer doesn't actually know the changes that you've made. So pressing tab or enter is the way to kind of save what you have put in that field and move on to whatever you're typing next. So now that we've got some data in, let's look at a few of the other useful things we want to do. You'll notice the home menu has a lot of very familiar looking controls to what we saw when we were working in Word. For example, we've got our bold, italic, underline, we've got our font stuff. So one of the things I like to do when I'm working with a spreadsheet is make the font a bit bigger because the default that Excel uses is pretty tiny, and especially if I'm working with numbers. Even if I decide to shrink it down later, if I'm going to print it, when I'm entering the data, I like to make it bigger. So again, go up to this corner, click that little triangle to select the entire worksheet. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to make it 16 point. That's so much easier to read. And because I had the whole worksheet selected, it applies that change to everything. Now, I probably want all these headings to be bold. So I want to select this whole row. I click on the row number. It automatically selects that row. And if I say bold, it makes everything bold. And because I applied that to the whole row, if I was to add another piece of information, you notice it's automatically set to be bold as well. So I've got my headings looking nice. I've got my text all bigger. Watch what happens though. Imagine if you had this whole page filled with data. The next row, you're going to be scrolling down. Notice my headings have disappeared off the screen. And if I've got a complicated spreadsheet, that can be a problem. You don't want to have to always be scrolling back up at the top to remind yourself of what each column was. So what you do is freeze that top row so it's not going to move. And Excel has a built-in function under the View tab. They have something called freeze panes. And if we click the little arrow, it says freeze top row. So watch what happens now if I scroll. That top row isn't going anywhere. So you want to do that as part of your setup when you were creating a spreadsheet, just to make life a little bit easier. So we've talked about how to enter data. We've talked about how to make the text bigger, how to make your columns bigger, because that's really handy. So again, click the column, hold the left mouse button down and just drag to make it bigger. So that's a fairly easy way to adjust your spacing. And I'm going to close this one down. I'll bring up another spreadsheet. To save your spreadsheet, you can go to the File menu, and you've got the option to save it if you've already given it a name, or you can do a Save As, and it'll prompt you to give it a new name and tell the computer where you want to save that file to. So it's no different than what you do when you save a Word document. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Don't forget to download the handout. You'll find the link in the video description at the bottom of your screen. You may need to click Show More to see the handout links. Thanks for watching.